Your government could or might kill you. I'm serious. That's not clickbait. That's real. May not mean to kill you, but they will nonetheless. And I'm here to tell you the story, or at least part of that story. Like it or not, the U.S. government has murdered its own citizens on more than one occasion. It's not BS. It's the real S. How do I know? It's a good question. Because they've done it before, and they'll do it again. The term is democide. That is where the government kills its own citizens. Now, early in America, or even before we were America, we had alcohol because the water wasn't up to sanitation. Just wasn't. Contained too much bacteria that led to other diseases. You gotta admit, the Puritans, Pilgrims, weren't really sharp on this. They had to be straightened out by several Native Americans who reminded them not to drink water in puddles or lakes, but to look for a spring or something like that. But still, crops were good, and usually when they had surplus, they would make whiskey from corn, and that could be used as a commodity or cash. Could be traded, bartered. It was easier to transport. Alcohol was everywhere in America. 1790s, when we became a nation, we were drinking down about 5.8 gallons every man, woman, and child. 5.8 gallons. Well, in the mid-1820s, that went up to 7 gallons. Give you a little hint there. That's 3 times what we drink as Americans now in 2024. And in 1825, they spent more than $12 million on alcohol. Americans did. That was more than what the U.S. government spent. So let's go back. So we have temperance movements and everything else. People don't like alcohol. And there's a movement for prohibition. Well, there's a couple of things. There's an income tax that starts in 1913, but it only affects 5.3% or 5.5% of the U.S. population because it's targeted at wealthier individuals. Now we have to go to prohibition. In 1919, January 16th, Nebraska's State House, they vote 98-0. With this vote, they became the 37th state and therefore ratified the 18th Amendment. Prohibition. The prohibition, though, that didn't really say a lot. They had to make an act of the Ball State Act. That said what was illegal and how to enforce it. And that created out of the Treasury Department the Prohibition Bureau, 1,520 agents. Think about it. 1,520 agents have to patrol the borders and the coastlines, 18,700 miles against smuggling. Yeah, they got some help from Customs and U.S. Coast Guard. They weren't too happy about it, but they were there. And never mind the fact they have to go after every American who's violating this act. They were paid similar to that of the wage of a garbage man. It was not an easy job. In the first 2.5 years, 30 agents from this bureau were killed. This kind of explains how they got trigger happy and shot 23 innocent civilians within a decade in Chicago alone. In 1927, according to the book Eating in America. The U.S. government is responsible for the death of 11,700 of its citizens by denaturing alcohol with strychnine and mercury and other ingredients to make it poisonous. Because alcohol still had to be produced. We still needed it for like paint thinners, embalming fluids, etc. Antifreeze. Initially, they wanted to just use soap and detergent, but that wouldn't be enough. The head of the superintendent of the ASL, the Anti-Saloon League, Wayne Wheeler, here's a peach, from Ohio, was a lawyer and a professional blackmailer because he would hire detectives to dig up dirt on, politicians, because if they didn't go his way, he would blackmail them into it. This is the only way that, in fact, he backed the lieutenant governor, Warren G. Harding, for the position of U.S. Senator of Ohio, which later led him to the President of the United States. By the way, Warren G. Harding said, the enforcement of the Prohibition Act was kind of a nationwide scandal. Well, no kidding, you're paying your guys next to nothing. So bribery is a constant thing. But the government killed 11,700 of its citizens in 1927 alone. Prohibition was failing. It didn't really matter. The U.S. government had lost $500 million in tax revenue alone from liquor sales, and basically just gave that to criminals like Al Capone. That's per year, by the way. States like New York also lost revenue. They lost almost half, 50% of their revenue, because they couldn't collect liquor tax. Because remember, didn't have no liquor. Walgreens, on the good side, they sold inflated whiskey prescriptions. Well, they didn't sell the prescriptions, but they sold whiskey as a prescription at inflated prices. That's how they became a large chain store, got outside of the state. It aggravates me that people just kind of accepted this in the time. You try to figure out, what were you thinking? Because that's what we do as historians. People were dying. But Wayne Wheeler said they got what they deserved. They knew the law was there, and it was illegal to drink alcohol, and it's basically a deliberate suicide. There were some other people that just said when family members would give whiskey to dying other family members, they said it would have been better off if you just let them suffer instead of you breaking the law. Well, that's kind of a moral thing you have to decide on your own. Wayne Wheeler would later, thankfully, go his own way. His wife and father-in-law were killed in an explosion in 1927, I think August, near Lake Michigan. Their stove exploded. His wife caught on fire. Her father rushed in. As soon as he saw his daughter like that, he died of a heart attack. Wayne Wheeler came downstairs, did what he could, contacted an ambulance and everything else, but his wife passed away. He would later die 3 weeks later from a heart attack. So pretty much after Wayne Wheeler was gone, the ASL lost steam. Couldn't even afford to pay its subscription to its Washington's office for a newspaper subscription. And 6 years later, well, the noble experiment was over. But not before thousands of Americans were killed by its government. So, this makes you think. when you hear Ronald Reagan say the most terrifying words you can hear is, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." So remember that. Well, that's history. It's not a good history, but it's in the past. Come back tomorrow when we talk about today, I hope. And like always, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe. Again, they send me this stuff every month. YouTube does. 88% of the people that watch my stuff or my videos aren't subscribed. I'm at 70 right now. I like to get to 100 before November 1st. That would be neat. But I really would like for you to subscribe. If you are already subscribed, ring the bell, like. If you don't like, that's okay too. You just got to leave a comment. Okay. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll see you tomorrow.